Welcome to the Lessons from the Leap podcast, where we showcase visionary entrepreneurs and leaders, sharing their incredible journeys and inspiring stories. Let's dive into the show.
Hello, and welcome to Lessons from the Leap. I'm your host, Gazanfer Mansoor. On this show, I get to sit down with entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders to talk about bold decisions, pivotal moments, and innovative ideas that shape their journey. This episode is brought to you by Technology Rivers. At Technology Rivers, we bring innovation through technology and AI to solve real-world problems. If you'd like to learn more about us, head over to technologyrivers.com and tell us more about your project. Today's guest is someone who has not only helped launch software in a space, but also helped countless SaaS products back to earth, running faster, safer, and smarter. I'm joined by Todd Merrill, a seasoned software executive, fractional CTO, and CISO, and true technologist with career that spans innovation, cybersecurity, and product turnaround. I will let Todd introduce himself. Todd, welcome to the Lessons from the Leap. Tell us more about everything about you, and then we'll go right in.
Yeah. Hi, Gazanfer. It's always great talking to you. I know it's going to be a good day when we're on the phone. So you've been a great partner for me on a lot of different projects. So Todd Merrill, fractional CTO. I've had a lot of experiences in the C-suite, both as a partner, founder, CEO, raised money, started lots of companies, exited to private equity. Done some real estate along the way. And then I've kind of settled on my niche as the software startup silverback. So if you look on LinkedIn, but love helping people start companies. And, these days it's a lot about AI. And I realized earlier in the year, we as technologists have had a lot of AI tools at our disposal, but there's a lot of people struggling with what I'm going to call practical AI, or this generative or LLM type AI in the rest of the C-suite, and it's starting to get accessible to most people, but it's still a little tricky, and I think a lot of people need just a little bit of help from a tech buddy. So that's been kind of a fun thing I've been working on lately.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. You have stepped into many fix-it CTO roles.
Oh, yeah.
What's your playbook when you walk into turnaround?
Yeah. So, turnarounds are tough. Usually there's chaos, hair on fire. I call it ADD driven development. Probably the worst case of it. Man, I don't even want to say the name of the company, but I was brought in after I had run a startup as CEO, a venture capital company brought me in to do a turnaround as CTO, and everybody quit except for one engineer. And then he had like three bosses: the CEO, the marketing guy, and the sales guy, and they all had opinions. And he was basically just context switching the whole day. Hey, fix this, fix this, fix this, fix this. I got to do a demo. And then, my favorite playbook is get in between that poor guy and management and say, okay, time out. We can't do everything, but we can do anything. We just have to do it in order. And then so that begins even if it's just a whiteboard, it's a product roadmap. Prioritization, and then just get a little headroom for the engineers, and then start shipping on a consistent basis, and let everybody know, hey, there's a priority. You know what your priorities are. You might have to wait a little bit, and that's just the way it is. And communicate early and often, and start hiring a team, and off we go. That was a good 4-year run, and we got the company sold. So. That was a good outcome, but for about a year there, 6 months, it was pretty hairy. Yeah. So usually when there's a turnaround, there's a problem, and you just never know.
Cool. So everybody's talking about AI. Mm-hmm. AI is changing everything. So that's one of the, I would say, most talk about topic nowadays, and it's becoming too much as well.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see people are taking it wrong?
Mm-hmm.
They understand AI one thing, but in reality, it is different.
Yeah. So I see this huge gap where, the C-suite and the investor class and the kind of the more theoretical strategic thinkers are see the potential of operational leverage that AI can bring. So there's a lot of stories about people going faster, more efficient using AI. And then, from that, not the CEO, but the rest of the C-suite down to the tactical level, I think there's a lot of confusion because AI is supposed to be this magic bullet thing. And people don't know how to define it, and they don't know how to run it, and they don't understand where this 30 to 300% 10x, efficiency gain is going to come from. And I think a lot of what happens is, 2-3 years ago, like Microsoft, for example, is pushing Copilot, which is a little bit underpowered. It's a good point solution. It helps you write your, term paper a little better, your email a little better. Quality of English has gone up, so that's worth something, but that's not, going to move the enterprise needle. So, I think that's one anti-pattern that I see is just go buy Copilot or ChatGPT licenses for everybody and hope for the best. That almost certainly is not going to work out on a grand scale. It's going to make people do a couple of things a little better web research, a little better, formulation of papers and text, but it's really not what we're looking for. I think what has changed this year for me was the existence of this new protocol, MCP, Model Context Protocol, that Anthropic put forward, I don't know, like about almost a year ago, Christmas timeframe, which allows us to now bring SaaS tools, SaaS APIs into the conversation on these desktop LLM models that people have access to. And for me, that's been a huge game changer because, generative LLMs are great. They're creative. They'll fill in the gap. They'll arrange the words on the paper that sound very eloquent. But then a lot of times when you read them, it's just complete BS, or it's just like, you're just making this stuff up, but MCPs kind of solve that problem, or at least a lot of that problem, where you can ask factual questions against your traditional data repositories where a lot of your business logic lives, and then get authoritative actual numbers to questions that are interesting questions, and then you make that look beautiful. And I think that's a huge improvement. And then for me, I didn't really get on the LLM train for a while. And I actually didn't even get ChatGPT until this calendar year, just because I didn't understand, what it was good for. I think MCP is kind of the big unlock here. Unfortunately, it's been kind of hard because it's really wonky and technical to set it up. So it hasn't been accessible to, like, say, a CMO or a CFO in a large, in a broad sense. But I think it's getting better and better every day. Anthropic's done a pretty good job with that. You see an OpenAI with their agent, generator that they just came out with. You can start to hook up MCP connectors. I think that's going to be a huge unlock for a lot of people. But it's such a new way of thinking about business. It's just difficult for people to get their heads around until you get in there and kind of get your hands dirty and mess with it. And you get a couple projects under your belt. And then I think once that light bulb goes off, people go nuts and then get really productive for a couple weeks and then kind of calm down. And, it's fun to watch when that happens. But it's a weird time.
No,
yeah.
No, that's a good mention of MCP. So we call it MCP is the API for AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Which is really exposing your API models, your software into the APIs, to your your software into the AI, so anybody can just query, do anything. Configuration is tricky, but I've seen, like, personally, if somebody can do Make or Zapier, they can also do this one. Probably, I felt it easier than Make for sure. But for some people, maybe depending on who that person is, maybe I'm a techie person, so I'm able to do it. Not everybody.
And you're seeing SaaS vendors start to get it and then start to bake that MCP into their SaaS UI, right? So like we did one the other day for one of my clients. It was Active Campaign. They run email campaigns, and then Active Campaign, you just log into a website with your credential, and then you go to settings, like you usually would get like an API token. And then one of the options was, give me an MCP link for my data, and then so that was actually pretty cool. And then you can plug that in as a remote MCP, just cut and paste to get that going. And then it's a little weird and quirky, but wasn't too bad. Just like rough around the edges. You had to log in on a web browser at weird times. But then once we got it going, we connected Google Analytics for the web page, and then, along with that Active Campaign, and we just very, very quickly mashed up those two data sets with natural language, asking basic questions. How many people responded to the last? How are my email campaigns doing? And it would list them, and you go, okay, on that first one, how many people clicked on the link? Call to action. And then how many of those people bought? And then you start to kind of, paint the picture really, really quickly. In the way, software people, this is no big deal because we've had these tools forever. Marketing people have never had those tools, because you had to have Python or something, right? And then what's an API? And I don't get it. And, to heck with it. It's expensive. But now it's cheap if you can kind of get past this weird little setup time. It's an exciting time, and it's kind of like, these old corporation, like I worked at Bell South, which turned into AT&T. We had, product, but then we had like internal IT department, which there's a couple of folks that were in the back room that would bang out business apps for you to make, certain processes go faster. So if you're a big enough company, you used to be able to have an IT department that would give you these apps or small pieces of software that are business custom. I think we're kind of all the way back around to that, where people individually on their own laptop can create that type of piece of software just talking to their computer if you can set this stuff up correctly. And so it's, if everybody had their own personal IT department that could go run queries for them all the time, how does that change your world? And I think it's, very positive in it. Is it going to do all of your job for you? No, I don't think so. I think it's another anti-pattern, hire an agent, name them and put them on the org chart. So like I have a virtual agent that's my CMO. I don't think that's the way the world's going to go for a while. I think it's going to you're going to need a really good CMO and then augment them with AI. And then you get a super great CMO. But you still need the CMO, and they can do way more with less resources in a hurry. But I think that's the way the world's going, right? It's not replacing people. It's just making people way better.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. You're a big fan of Claude.
Mm-hmm.
What makes it stand out for you compared to other LLMs, Gemini, Grok, GPT?
Yeah. So for me, so Claude is a coder and so am I. So we get along very well. Claude does not do well with pictures or design. So if you're looking to do those kind of things, there's probably different, better solutions for you out there in the market. Claude does APIs exceptionally well. And then Claude Desktop and Claude Code are linked, right? Under the covers. So you'll be kind of doing something interesting in the Claude Desktop, and then all of a sudden it'll shift into code mode and it'll write you a little Python script or a little Node script to process your, your email list or whatever it is you're manipulating. That's a CSV or an Excel. So that's kind of fun the first time that happens. And that gives you a little bit of confidence that it's not just making up stuff as a generative LLM. It's actually writing code and then trying to get the correct answer and goal seeking, which is kind of fun. And then you could see the work and then check the method. And then I think for me, Claude Code, as software people, every 5 years or so, there's always this new, no code, low code, thing that comes out, and we all kind of roll our eyes and go, right, sure, this is, it's the death of software. We're never going to need software people again. And then it's actually really good for software people because everybody creates these little, apps and gets themselves into trouble. And then, we have a lot of business to clean all that stuff up. So I thought, okay, this is probably another, here we go again. It's another one of those. But I think it's really, really, a step up, a big step forward from those low code, no code generators. You can do very sophisticated things in a very short period of time if you know what you're doing and you're willing to kind of babysit the code generator. It's not a one-shot deal, and it can't make up stuff. Like if you ask it to just make me a LinkedIn clone or something very big, you're not going to be happy with the output. But if you know what you're doing and you know what to ask for, and then so like me and you have managed teams, large teams, and detailed teams and multi-talented teams, the kinds of questions we would task our teams with, in the same process that we know and love. You go do requirements review, interview the subject matter person, you get the product requirements in, and then you line them up with the business requirements. You could do all that with AI or aided by AI. I love getting a transcript in of a recorded message where we've had a detailed interview. And then you go do planning, and then you go do architecture analysis, like you would, talk to an architect. And then you go through architectural review. And then once you've made some selections, then and only then you start biting off little pieces of the code and you get exactly what you want. And I think that's a deadly way to do it. You still have to know what you're doing. But for a very talented person, it can make them super awesome, 10x, 100x, 1000x talent, more efficient. But in the same way, it can, if you don't know what you're doing, it'll 10 or 100x, a very poor person. So whereas you can kind of like get through, now you're going to be really, really dangerous and waste a lot of time.
I can resonate that a lot. So we are seeing those kind of projects, as you said, like people are creating it. Now it's creating opportunities for the developers. So now there are different types of outputs that are coming. So it's like somebody gives you a one-page requirement, very broad, versus somebody's giving you a very specific one. So it depends on, so people who can elaborate their thinking well, they can articulate things, they are the one who are able to produce those well. So, and there are some who are just giving a very high level requirement, like a clone me a LinkedIn. You get something, but then you just struggle. So there is a process of creating those as we create. So, I mean, it could be you just give an initial instruction that gives you a prompt to generate. So sometime in our process business, what we do is we use different tools for, let's say, UX Pilot, Visly, to even generate some screens and then take it to Lovable or Replit and get to the next step. So it's a combination of different things that and it's like building a product then. So it's no longer became as easier. These tools are available, but people are thinking, okay, I can just create anything. But that also opened up opportunities. These people are creating, but beyond that, now how do you take it to the next level? But the good thing is, instead of having a requirement doc, or it's probably the way we look at it, it's replacing your initial blueprinting or the requirement flows part, because now customer can articulate and then able to produce the initial flows. Now that's giving a clarity to build a real product.
Mhm. Yeah. I've kind of taken this to an art form. So it started Father's Day. My dad is a president of the Florida Condo Association, and they just passed a bunch of laws that are sunshine laws where all these there's I can't remember Surfside or I can't some condo in South Florida got cheap and didn't maintain things and crumbled, and then that caused death, and then so they made laws saying, hey, we need to be transparent with our dealings. So I said, hey, Dad, I want to try something. I'm going to show you what Claude Code can do. And Claude Code, by the way, is underneath Lovable and Replit and a lot of those really popular things. So it's all kind of the same code, same tools at the bottom. But so there's this kind of process I've settled on where I'll interview you on a recorded line as the subject matter or the entrepreneur, or you're the person who needs a product for an hour, half hour, or something. And I'll ask you really good questions about whether you want this or that. And is this important? Or is that important? Have you thought about these things? And then take that, pull it in Claude Desktop, and then do a bunch of research and say, ask me clarifying questions. I think that's an important thing to do, because generative AI is good about, generating lots of possibilities. And then, I care about that one. I do not care about that one. I care about this and not that. And then go through and then say, okay, at the end of all this, I want a business plan. I want research on competition. I want pricing, go to market. And then I want a phased implementation approach. And then I want an proposed architecture that could get us to market as quickly and efficiently as possible. And then that's kind of been a magic thing. You can get through that in a day, maybe a couple hours. And then you can go back to that entrepreneur and say, here's a piece of paper that's the business part of this. This should be very close to what we talked about. Are you willing to go to market with this? Phase one. And could you sell 10 of these to your buddies if I gave you this product? And then usually the answer is yes, or maybe negotiate. But we can then take the output of the technical and the business, put it in a Claude Code, and then code it up, and deploy it within a couple of days, maybe a week, and get people into business. It's a simple one, but it's clear thought and it's truly MVP. But I mean, man, what a great time to be alive where, we can get people going in a hurry for not very much money or time. And of course there's going to be a lot of development behind that, but if you're in business and you can prove there's customers, you're much more likely to get funding. You're much more likely to be able to bootstrap, for example. You're much more likely to go borrow money to, fund the business, or get friends to put in money. It all gets a little bit easier rather than, working 20 months. And I heard a guy said, hey, I worked for 20 months. I got most of an MVP done. We just need $100,000 to finish it. It kind of, 2 years ago, that wasn't so crazy. This year, that's like absolutely absurd. Why don't we flush it, start over, and be done in a couple weeks? So it's just mind bending how efficient these new coding tools have made everything.
Oh, that's true. Absolutely. So you just started talking about this investment. So, and you are an investor as well.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're talking to these different startups, what are the expectations from investor side, and what kind of startups are, I would say, easier to start or harder to start nowadays? What do you see in a startup and investment world?
Yeah. It's hard. It's easier and harder all at the same time. I think there's a lot of different market verticals that can benefit from, that can get started and get investment. Right now, everything's so tight. When we talk about the whole value chain of private equity and venture and and individual angels. But there's really no forgiveness in the market right now. There's no mulligans, there's no do-overs. You get one shot at it, and then you either get invested or you don't. And then because it's so easy to start companies and generate an MVP, that's just table stakes now. And a lot of companies do get started. So it's so much tougher now because there's so much noise at that initial seed stage. Getting that first check in the door, that's not, the founder's pocketbook. And then people get frustrated because, hey, I did a product, I'm in business, where are the angels at? That's not the way it works, right? And then I went to Southeast Investor Roundtable down at Georgia Tech, like, I don't know, a month or two ago, and the Keiretsu Forum, which is a very active angel, first check angel organization. The guy stood up in front of us and said, we don't, he said he had so many investments that didn't exit that, they're like 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 years old. He doesn't want to look at anything unless you're going to exit in 3 years and you only need one check to do it. And then ideally, you got to get to $1 million run rate within a year. And I think about like how crazy hard that is. And that's the first check. And then he wants to be the only check in. So like that is an incredibly hard thing to do, even for experienced entrepreneurs who know what they're doing. So many things have to go exactly right. And if you've never done it before and you don't have a track record and you don't have a lot of personal capital, it's very, very difficult to get anybody's attention. It's almost insurmountable. So that's kind of what I'm seeing in the early stage. Venture will back you if you have a pretty, it's almost like a banking transaction. You definitely have revenue. They want to see that $1 million run rate is kind of a magic number for a lot of investors where you've solved a lot of things, product market fit. Can you sell it? Do you know how to tell people what your product is? Is there a product? Have you built it? There's less venture money going in because there's less private equity money or other limited partner money going into these venture funds. The interest rate, the interest rates, the cost of money to borrow has gotten more expensive because we have higher interest rates relative to 5 or 10 years ago with the zero interest rate policies. So it's just it's hard for the venture people to raise money to put it into your company. So a lot of these funds are drying up. A lot of the big funds that have been successful are attracting all the money. And then, they're only going to put money into things that are sure things. So it's just kind of crazy hard time right now. And then the private equity people, I think, saw opportunity. The private equity, there's a lot of money, dry powder, but nobody wants to deploy it unless they know that they can exit, in a reasonably fast time frame. So there's not been any IPOs for a while. So I don't know how this stuff unrolls, but I think it all kind of comes back to you start a business that throws off cash, so you're not dependent on the VC cycle, for money right now, which ironically is going to make you super attractive to the VCs and the private equity people.
Sure.
So the best time to get a loan is when you don't need it. So
Absolutely.
It's a tough world out there. So yes, it's easier, but it's also harder because of the money situation.
Yeah. I mean, obviously at the same time, because you can build things quickly, so the expectations are much higher as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So are you involved in any startup as well? Or obviously as part of your fractional work, you work with a lot of startups. Anything interesting that you can openly share with this forum?
Yeah, I mean, Konsuld is one of them I'm involved with. Konsuld. So they're doing, I guess it's like, AI research assistant for medical clinicians. Doing some really innovative things with indexing the whole world of PubMed and scholarly articles and YouTube and a lot of interesting medical things, and then helping doctors to with their cases to try to be the medical assistant that doesn't ever sleep, and then creating community around doctors. So for me, it's that perfect blend of yes, it's AI, but it's helping really smart people to be even better. So it's not replacing doctors; it's making the already existing smart doctors even better, and then providing them a way to talk to each other, and have that human in the loop element of all this, which I think is super important. So that's a good example of practical AI. I've got a couple others that are a little bit earlier stage. Probably not ready to talk about those, but there's all kinds of really innovative stuff going on, in cybersecurity, healthcare, compliance. I think that MSP business model, in the IT world is getting ready to get disrupted big time. It's legal stuff going on. Anything to do with words. I think there's a lot of noise in the marketing world. Everybody and their brothers building a couple of lightweight apps to, follow up after your sales call, help you prospect, run your CRM, generate ever more clever LinkedIn outreach and, cold emails. That whole space is interesting because, people are starting to get numb. People have gotten numb to AI generated everything. You just look at your mailbox, it's just clogged with a bunch of stuff, and it's hard to kind of cut through that. So I don't envy the marketing world right now. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on.
Thank you. Any latest fun projects, your personal projects? I know we were talking earlier.
Yeah. So, this is, I don't know if I mentioned that process that I call it the velocity process. So I don't know what to do with it, but I'm trying to figure out, how to use it for good in the world. But, so we were down at the beach last week and, Beth does crochet and we're sitting around. I said, hey, she's struggling because she wants to make these blankets for people with like a college logo or a picture of their kid or dog or something. They're graphical designs. And she has to count like these scan lines that go across. And I said, hey, Beth, why don't we just write you a little piece of software to do that so you don't have to struggle with the, how many, blacks and reds and grays. And she said, okay, so I interviewed her, put her through the process. And then like the next, the business process basically said, if you're never going to make it, more than $200, literally $200 a year if you're a top 10 seller in this category. So there's no chance in hell you're going to make money at this. But we said, okay, what the heck, it'll make Beth happy. So wrote the software in like, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours on Saturday morning, got it pretty good. And then it matched kind of what she was already working on. So it's kind of fun. Is that ever going to make any money? No. But, is it going to make a couple of nice people, happy with crochet patterns? Yeah, probably, So is that worth doing? Yeah, I guess. But that's kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, you always need those projects to obviously to keep that fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So while we are on a personal, can you share more about the podcast, the Tales from the Sky Lounge? So tell us, who's it for?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a podcast about business consulting and venture investing. And we have guys like you who are getting out there in the world and making it happen and get your stories. So, I'm a partner at TechCXO in the product and technology practice area. So we realized that, part of being a little bit older is you have a lot of really cool friends that have done some amazing things. And, we don't often get a chance to tell our stories, or people don't ask us for our stories. It's always kind of intense interaction when you're on the job, some of these turnarounds and stuff. So, what a cool opportunity to just get our friends and our business partners and, people within our orbit in the venture community, to tell the stories about what's going on in the world. We talk about AI, just about every episode, because everybody's trying to figure it out, right? And we talk about the venture cycle and the economy a lot. We talk about a lot of cool, little businesses that struggle for 7 or 8, 9, 10 years, and then they're an overnight success, and that's all everybody remembers. It's a double-digit, triple-digit million exit. It was easy, right? And nobody hears the story about the struggles and the trials and tribulations, and how it almost blew up, but they kept going anyway. So those are great stories to have. So it's kind of fun. Yeah. So I appreciate everybody that comes on, and we try to get those stories out there in the world. So I don't know how many people listen to that, but for me, it's super satisfying to sit down and talk to people.
Yeah, I see those the clips on the social media. So I do listen to those clips. So, and obviously those 30 seconds, 1 minute, all those clips are really helpful. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's fun. I have a producer, James, who's a project manager for us on the technical side, and he's just happened to be in LA, and he just happened to be an old video producer, and he raised his hand and said, "Hey, I would love to do that." So, but James sits there in the background, and we let him pick what's interesting. And it's always interesting what he picks, as an interesting subject. Because it's not always kind of what we find interesting or what the speaker, would find interesting. It's always kind of fun, hearing from a disinterested third party, what's kind of interesting. For those clips.
Yeah, I was at one of the podcasts, and the guy was doing something similar to what James, but he was doing it. He was also really like spitting those messages right during the podcast on LinkedIn. Because
Wow.
it was a LinkedIn live. So that was interesting. Like picking up and then sharing those along the way. Probably extracted 20 different messages out of that one.
While
podcast.
He's doing it live?
Well, I mean, he had a person like you had, James. So
yeah. But how cool is that we live in a world like it used to be really, really, really difficult just to have a video signal, and then YouTube kind of democratized that a little bit. And now we can do all these wonderful things. You can get like real-time transcriptions in 5 languages, and, clips, and, cartoon images and memes, and, post it to social media, like just let it go. Software's gotten really, really powerful here last couple of years.
Yep. And Todd, so you're a pilot as well, and you're a track lead. You have been a scout leader. So anything you can share, but then I think more importantly, what do these pursuits teach you about how to lead in the business?
Oh, wow.
Any lessons?
Yeah. So, triathlon, I did my 40s, and then COVID kind of got me, and then I gained about 50 pounds, and then that really got me. So I don't do a whole lot of triathlon, but, it's the whole idea through triathlon, translates into business. Startups are a marathon. They're not a sprint, and it's not a lot of what you have to do in a startup or in business in general is grind work. It's, the daily training, getting up out of bed when you don't feel like it, but also celebrating the wins, along the way, however small, maybe made a little personal record, on your 5-mile run, or maybe you placed on the podium in your age group, or some small victory like that. It's important to mark the wins. and then triathlon's a very, personal sport, so I think, Scouts is kind of the antidote to that. Scouts is all about leadership and teaching the next generation, as an adult, basic skills for sure, but leadership, it's all about leadership development. And then, kind of watching young people make mistakes, in a controlled environment and have to figure it out. And then, kind of knowing when to step in, course correct, and knowing when to kind of like nature, teach. Physics is a great teacher, so if they're going to burn their dinner or they forgot, an ingredient in their dinner, maybe that's a good, teaching moment. As adults, maybe we can backstop that with a little peanut butter in the back pocket, but, helping people develop their leadership skills is a eye-opening experience, and it makes you personally a better leader, and a better teammate too. I think, knowing how to work in teams, knowing how to plan large scale, events month in, month out. Those are all very, very valuable skills. And in piloting, it's all about getting out there in the world and making stuff happen. So, Tales from the Sky Lounge was the podcast. I think going, I've been able to fly to see clients a couple different times, and every time I've done it, it's paid off in spades in unexpected, meaningful ways. Sometimes it's giving somebody a ride. Sometimes it's being able to show up, last minute when you couldn't otherwise do it for lunch or dinner or the key, business meeting. But it's always worth it to get out in the world and just show up. And I think, in the Zoom culture that we have now, we don't even know what an office looks like anymore. It's super valuable to have those skills to be able to show up and talk to people, one-on-one or in a group or, in a in-person setting. I think that's very valuable.
Maybe we should do our next podcast in person.
Heck yeah, let's do it. You're in
maybe in the plane.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we can do that. You're in DC and I'm in Atlanta. Both those places have wild airports. So maybe we'll pick somewhere in the middle.
And we are right in front of the airport. So
okay. All right. Yeah. So we'll make that happen. Maybe I'll fly up to Potomac. That's on the south side. We can fly in there.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. Couple more before we wrap up. So what opportunities do you see for the AI?
It's such a wild time right now. I think everybody's struggling hard to figure it out. I think everybody's got a taste for it and knows that it's powerful, but it also does some really knuckleheaded things a lot of times. And so what do you do with that? Right. And I think that's the opportunity. And then, so what I'm telling people is crawl, walk, run. And crawl is personal productivity. And so you have to get Claude Desktop, ChatGPT, Gemini, maybe Grok. I don't know about Grok, but something, right? And start playing with it. And then, learn something new and stretch. And, even if you don't get it today, you'll get it pretty quick. And the tools are always getting easier. So, but you do have to get on that learning curve with the rest of everybody right now. And just hold on and just, chip away at your personal productivity. Make something that will follow up on an email after a phone call, make something that will research a podcast for you, make something, chip away at it, and then make your life a little easier. And then I think walk is, for me, is, we have, once you get a couple of people inside a company that get it and get what it can do, get a little technical help, and then, we can help you with team projects, so maybe go rent software, a SaaS software that has a little AI in it, and then bolt that on to some kind of internal process, one or more internal processes that you have, and then play with that. And then, run is, enterprise readiness. At some point, we're going to have 1 million billion agents run around that everybody's going to create. Some are small, some are more complex, some are, have a lot of working pieces, but there's going to need to be enterprise security. There's going to need to be financial discipline. We're going to need uptime. We're going to need reliability, all the things that traditional IT people have had to engineer in for forever. A lot of that's lacking right now, and it's real easy to kind of brush past that. But if you're really going to run your company on some of these things, you're really going to need enterprise discipline, and that you're going to need professional help, for that. And it's the same people that have always done software. You're not going to get rid of software people. Our jobs are going to become a lot more complicated. We're going to need to use AI in our own way to keep up with all this stuff, to make stuff, better, faster, stronger, to test, to comply, to, do all the software scans, to, find all the bugs and fix them, and, wrangle all the, policies and procedures, just like we always have, is set faster. So I think crawl, walk, run, personal, team, enterprise is a good framework. And then don't worry about being behind the curve. We all are. And then it's just a wild time to be alive. And AI is not going away. Our Roombas are not going to, take over our households and eat us, or, turn into the Terminator anytime soon. But they're still going to, sweep our floor and, make our lives a little better. And I think that's, augment really good humans with AI is a good way to think about it for now. And we're a long way away from replacing humans with any kind of AI.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the mistakes also. People make, they assume that, AI would do everything. So the human part is definitely the most important one to consider. And then good point about the crawl part. I think what has helped with tools like Cloud Desktop, now we call it like a pre-MVP phase in many of the projects where any of the AI project where customers are expecting something. So, okay, can we do a small mini project where just using your data, how do we generate those prompts so that his output? And if you're okay with that output, then putting a tool around that is not as complicated, rather than building something and then keep experimenting and looking at it. So we also push customers towards building that kind of a pre-MVP, a tiny MVP, to really see the output that you want. So because at the end, that's the final output that will be expected. So what is that? If we can figure that part out separately, that would save a lot of time and money, obviously.
Yeah. Experiment small.
Yeah. What advice would you give to startup founder who feels stuck between growth and chaos?
That's,
I know traditional one, but
you're doing it right.
I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, it's just the tension. Startups are messy and chaotic in it. If I like you and you're a good client and you're in that spot, you'll get the accidental empire speech. So there's this old book. They studied Microsoft, Oracle, Sun, Cisco, all the old Silicon Valley companies that were high growth in the internet era. And then so what they found was there's kind of three phases that companies go through, kind of like an army. So you send in the commandos. It's a small group of people with very focused one goal: blow up the tower on the hill. I don't care how, right? Arm them to the teeth, spend money. That's kind of like startup world, right? You just get an MVP out. You start selling it to people any way you can. It's all good. And then at some point, you're successful, and then you have to shift gears in the second phase, which is army of invasion. So, around 50 people, you start to need an HR person. There's probably some lawyers hanging around. You need health benefits. There's probably a SOC 2 audit lurking around somewhere. So you have cybersecurity. You have insurance because you got that big contract, and now you need that. There's coordination and infrastructure problems. You can't just wing it, right? You have to have plans. And then the last part is you won the war, take the bullets out of the guns. You're AT&T, just don't screw it up. We don't want to do anything new, right? Like keep everybody on dial up, forever. Well, so the three phases, you have to understand, there's three distinct phases of operation for a project, and then therefore a company. that's made up of lots of projects, and you have to put the right people. People tend to like one of and only one of those phases. And you have to understand that the people in the first phase, the commandos, are going to hate life when they get, to the steady state of the business. They're just not going to want to be there. And then the people in the middle are builders, but they can't do the chaos. It's their job to take the chaos and smooth it out into policies and procedures and to build infrastructure, corporate infrastructure, and then scale it up. Right. So I think that's, if you're experiencing scale and chaos, you're kind of shifting gears, just acknowledge that and also acknowledge that you might need a different skill set. You probably will need a different skill set, which might mean different people. And the people that started the company might not be the right people anymore, or you might need to find a better job for them, in this, while you're growing and put them on different other forward-looking things. Start a different other thread, a new project. And I think that's a good way to think about it. If you get to a company that's like IBM, that's super steady state, and they're just optimizing spreadsheets, for profit, that's a much different. People worked at IBM for 35 years. Like, that's unfathomable to a startup, commando, where it's like, 18 months and then they get bored. They want to go do something else. It's just a different mentality.
Yep. Cool. So if you had one magic wand and you could instantly fix one thing about how companies use AI today, what would it be?
I think it's change management is the hard part. There's such a variety of experiences and expectations with what AI is, how it works, what it should do, what it shouldn't do. There's a lot of fear. AI is horrible. AI, uses too much electricity. The business model isn't going to work. For sure, they're all going to fail any day now. You hear all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There's just weird expectations about what people think it should do. If we could wave a wand and get everybody level set on expectations for what it is, how to implement it, and then kind of what the standard playbook is, which we will do in the next 3 years, I think that would be a super helpful thing. And then that's kind of my thesis is that's what the world needs right now, more than just throwing AI at the wall and let's see what happens. We need to, as technology leaders, help people through this period of uncertainty, and then figure out what normal should be, and then help people change, to that operational norm. What's the world look like when we all know what an agent does and can agree on that, and we have agentic infrastructure within our companies, and everybody's happy about it, financially, security, infrastructure, uptime, deployability, access, all that stuff.
Cool.
Got a little work to do.
Yeah. So we have been talking with Todd Merrill. Todd, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah. talesfromtheskylounge.com is my podcast. It's got all my socials on there. LinkedIn, I'm on there just about every day. Be happy to say hello, and my inbox is open. So send me a message, and if I can help you in any way possible, I will.
Cool. Thanks, Todd. Todd, this was packed with gold, from architecture and AI to leadership and resilience. I really appreciate you sharing your stories and hard-won lessons with us. And for those listening, if you want to hear more about Todd's insight, check out his podcast that Todd just mentioned, Tales from the Sky Lounge, where he dives into the business consulting and venture capital. And also, you can look up him on his LinkedIn. We will share those links also in the podcast description. As always, thanks for tuning in to Lessons from the Leap. If this episode sparked any ideas or give you clarity, don't forget to share it with someone in your network who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep leaping, keep building. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lessons from the Leap podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll catch you next time.